Hello and welcome to GameTales. Destiny, the Last City. From across the ruined earth they came, seeking shelter from the storm. The Last City, also known as the Last Safe City, or simplified to the city, is the final bastion of humanity. Located somewhere on Earth, the city was built and is located directly under the floating traveller to take advantage of its protective shields. The city was slowly built after the collapse, marking the end of the Dark Age and the beginning of the City Age. Most of humanity's survivors now live in the city, as opposed to the hidden enclaves throughout Earth. Countless wars were fought to keep the peace, and from this era of strife rose the Guardians. Surrounding it is a massive wall built by the first Titans to assist in keeping out enemies. The tower formerly rested along the wall, which was the headquarters for the Guardians. They have defended the city for centuries, but this defense did not last indefinitely, as demonstrated by Dominus Gaul's invasion. The city was occupied by Gaul and his Red Legion following the onset of the Red War, but was liberated after a counter-offensive led by the Vanguard. The city is inhabited by humans, awoken, and exos, who all work together in the time following the Golden Age to build the city and its defences. The city was once embroiled by a bitter war between the different factions of the city, until the Guardians stepped in and put a stop to the violence. During the Red War, the Red Legion's occupation of the city disrupted its governance. Although the Vanguard and Consensus survived, the Speaker is presumed dead following the city's liberation, and it is unclear who, if anyone, will fill his role. The city is the last populated city on Earth and the last bastion for mankind and civilization. The city was built long after the Traveller gave its life to push back the darkness. A small settlement slowly began to build where the Traveller hovers, where it slumbers. Mankind came together to build the city underneath the Traveller because it provides protection from the horde of the darkness. For a long time after the collapse, humanity had been divided into various petty fiefdoms, with Guardians blessed with the Traveller's light becoming petty kings or bandits that preyed on the weak. However, following the foundation of the Iron Lords, humanity began to unite underneath the Traveller with the guidance of the first Speaker. The last city began to take root. It started as a small number of tents But as more guardians and humans began to arrive in the area, the city began to grow, the tents turning into fully fledged buildings and exploding in size as population increased. Even throughout various alien attacks, such as fallen raids, the city grew until it reached its maximum extent, and the Guardians, including Zavala, Ikora Ray, and Shax, helped to build the city's walls. At some point during the city's existence, the various factions and groups in the city fought one another for dominance in a conflict that nearly tore the city apart. However, the conflict was ended when the Guardians stepped in and put an end to the fighting. The end of the faction wars saw the creation of the current city government, with the civilian consensus, the Guardian Vanguard, and the Speaker serving as the city's leaders. Despite the faction wars, the city had been involved in two major battles. The first was the Battle of Six Fronts, when 4 orders of Titans had to defend the wall against 6 enemy approaches. The second, and far more devastating one, was the Battle of Twilight Gap. The full might of the fallen houses descended upon the city as countless guardians fell, but were eventually routed from the city. In recent years, the city began to reach out to fight back the hordes of the darkness, striking back against the alien invaders. They engaged in a war of resistance with Oryx, the Taken King, and his Taken Army, a conflict that would be called the Taken War. Fortunately, the Guardians were able to push Oryx and his Taken back, culminating in a raid that breached Oryx's Ascendant realm on the Dreadnought. The raid ended with the deaths of Oryx's most powerful servants and the Taken King himself. However, the war wouldn't end, even with the deaths of various pretenders who sought Oryx's vacant throne, but would have to continue fighting the lingering hive and Taken in the system. The last city and the Vanguard didn't take an active role during the SIVA crisis, with the radical devil splicers in the Plague Lands, as the conflict was handled by Lord Saladin, 04, and the Guardians, who became the next generation of Iron Lords. They were, however, at least aware of the conflict, but didn't take immediate action unless it reached the outskirts of their territory. Forces of the city did aid the Guardians when they discovered a fallen plot that would destroy the Bannerfall Tower and leave the city vulnerable. With the city's help, the Guardian was able to drive out the Fallen, thereby securing the tower and by extension the entire city's wall. The Vanguard began to take a more active role during the SIVA crisis, when old adversaries began to reappear, such as Tanix, Omnigul, and Secrion subverted mind. Overseen by Ikora A and supported by Cade 6, the Guardians were able to destroy Tanix Perfected, as he was resurrected by the Devil Splicers using SIVA. Later, the Guardians were able to prevent the remaining Taken from controlling the repaired Vex Nexus mind and slaying Omnigul before she could resume her purpose in serving her dead masters. 2 years after the Taken War, the Cabal Empire's Red Legion launched a major invasion of Earth, headed by the Red Legion commander and Emperor of the Cabal Empire, Dominus Gaul. The Red Legion launched a devastating surprise attack on the last city. This attack would completely devastate Earth's last bastion and the tower, being the most devastating offensive ever launched against the Guardians. The attack left Guardians cut off from the light and severely crippled. Following the invasion, Red Legion forces began occupying the city. Several weeks after the Red Legion's occupation of the city, a vanguard counter-offensive led by commanders of Allah, Cade 6, and Ikora A liberated the city. During the occupation, the Speaker was killed and the Traveller subjected to a massive cage which constricted its power and allowed the commander of the Legion, Dominus Gaul, to extract its light for himself. However, during the battle to liberate the city, Gaul was killed and the stolen light reclaimed by the Traveller, which had awoken for the first time since the collapse. The tower was destroyed in the battle, and the vanguard, as well as many other vendors, were forced to relocate until the old tower could be renovated. The vanguard continued to authorize and direct strikes against priority targets from their new position. During the events of Black Armory, the city was breached by the Kells Scourge, an anarchist faction of fallen terrorists who sought to steal and harness Black Armory technology to rise against all fallen orders. Their attack was the largest fallen offensive on the city since the Battle of the Twilight Gap, and required a full team of 6 Guardians to raid their lair. The attack was neutralized when the Guardians confronted the source of the attack, Insurrection Prime, Kells Scourge, who battled the Guardians with a massive war mech, eventually being brought down by the combined efforts of the Guardian raid team. Some time after the Red Legion's defeat at the Sundial and the return of Saint 14, the Scion Flare Amtech, in a final desperate act, commandeered the Almighty and sent it on a collision course for Earth, hoping to annihilate the last city. Thankfully, Zavala and Anastasia Bray, with the help of Rasputin and the Guardians, were able to reactivate the Warmind's Seraph countermeasures. Mere days before the Almighty's collision, the Warmind weapons bombarded the ship until it finally exploded in low orbit. Debris from the Almighty's core crashed along the side of a mountain near the city, unleashing a massive shockwave that did minor damage to the settlement. Overall, however, the last city survived Amtek's plot thanks to the efforts of the Guardians and the Warmind. Unfortunately, this victory against the Cabal would prove short-lived, as the last city received reports of pyramid-shaped vessels appearing over planets of the solar system. The Guardians, the Vanguard, and Last City officials soon confirm their worst fears. The darkness had returned. Worse, Rasputin is silenced by the darkness when it and Anna Bray attempted to fight back with the Warmind's Warsat network, only to fail. As the Guardians work with Eris Morn to discern the darkness's intentions in the messages the Pyramid sent on Ior, Zavala gathers the main city factions to formulate a plan should the darkness turn hostile. Despite some initial squabbling, Zavala is able to reach a compromise with the factions, gaining their support in the establishment of Project Stronghold, the plan to fortify the city's defences. Districts of the city: Anchor District, Botsa District, City Perimeter, Core East, Core South, District 125, Midtown, Military District, Peregrine District, Ridgeback District, Riverside. The Core.